Zorah Magdaros, a colossal walking mountain and an interesting siege fight in Monster Hunter, to say the least. Monster Hunter has a long history of fantastic siege fights, and these fights typically have some features that separate them from the average hunt. The task to defend a fortress or barrier, multiple phases, perhaps even scaling the monsters themselves. These hunts are often paired with weapons like mounted ballistas, cannons, dragonators, demolishers, usually just anything big to deal with equally big monsters. Siege fights range from hunts like the Great Gen Morin, Lao Shen Lung, Dalamadur, as well as our angry turtle mounted friend. Basically the pinnacle of all hunts when it comes to Monster Hunter, a big unified attempt to stop some giant fella from most likely destroying the place you love or something or other. In order to take down such a formidable foe, you must use everything at your disposal. But what if you didn't? Now, Zorah Magdaros alone isn't a difficult fight by any means. You can approach the hunt in many different ways to take him down, such as using the aforementioned weapons surrounding the battlefield, dropping down the stalagmites above him, and of course using your handy weapon of choice. However, I'm not going to be using any of that whatsoever. My goal is to take down Zorah Magdaros, who has the highest health pool in the base game of 24,000 HP with nothing but damage from the Kinsect, and only the Kinsect. Yup, only this. No regular attacks with my insect glaive or the use of powders, no use of any of the armaments scattered throughout the fight such as the world famous Dragonator. I'll save that for the commander. And of course, I'll only have the gear that's available to me at this point in the game, so my options are limited. Why? Because I was bored. Well, to be more specific, I've been very curious to see the limits the Kinsect can be pushed within Monster Hunter World and Iceborne, so I've been going through Monster Hunter World from the beginning using only the Kinsect. I've made it through the entire game up to this point with relatively good damage, but this colossal monster was standing in my way, and the game very much expects you to use all of the tools the siege fight provides to be successful in this hunt. In Monster Hunter World's story, you technically fight Zorah twice. I've already conquered the first fight against him, but that one is a lot more scripted and easier than the final fight I must face now. This video will go over pushing the Kinsect to the limit and seeking the ultimate strategy to achieve this feat, as well as learning the fascinating quirks of Zorah Magdaros along the way, so sit back and prepare for the classic tale of David versus Goliath. Before we get into how the Kinsect functions and how to exactly optimize for this fight, let's go over what this encounter with Zorah Magdaros normally entails. We can break down the final Zorah hunt into two phases, the first of which where you're on top of him taking down his magma cores and dealing with Nergigante, and the final phase where you're fighting him on top of a barricade using cannons and the like. The three ways you can fail the hunt is either triple carding, taking longer than 50 minutes, thus running out of time, or if Zorah reduces the barricade's health to 0 and destroys it. Unlike something like the Gen Morin fight, there isn't a choice between a kill or a repel. The repel is locked in when you do about 17,400 damage to Zorah, ending the fight and finishing the low rank part of the story and game. During a normal encounter, stalactites can do 500 damage each, cannons and ballista can be loaded up for hundreds of damage, and the Dragonator does a whopping 2,424 damage on hit as well. Ignoring these tools will be a lot of free damage that we will be avoiding. Technically, I can trigger the stalactites falling with my Kinsect, but I really want to see how far I could push the little bug, and I didn't want to resort to any outside damage from it, at least if I didn't have any other choice, that is. Now, meet Ariana Grande. She's going to be our star hunter here controlling the Kinsect. Best of luck to her, truly. She's going to need a lot more than 7 rigs to take this lava turtle down with only a bug at her disposal. So let's get into my very first hunt against Zorah Magdaros within this challenge. Admittedly, it was pretty damn rough. We start in the prep area, and soon after we get transported on top of Zorah Magdaros as he marches towards the barricade. It's time to launch my Kinsect at some magma cores. There are 4 big damageable cores on Zorah Magdaros. I start by chucking my Kinsect headfirst into the one closest to me. Now, the benefit of using a Kinsect, or really any ranged weapon, is you can avoid the lava bursts that come out of these cores. Once I send the Kinsect out, if I keep pressing the attack button, he just repeatedly bashes his head and does some pretty consistent damage. On a target that's immobile like these rocks, the Kinsect excels. The first problem I faced, however, is that I could only attack a certain amount of times before my Kinsect would run out of stamina, and once it's out of stamina, you can't really do much. Basically, Kinsects have their own stamina bar separate from the one that your hunter possesses. Thankfully, there's a way to replenish it, as well as extend the size of the bar similar to eating a ration or a well-done steak. Right next to the first magma rock is a pile of stones. By grabbing the stones and feeding it to the Kinsect, it can increase the maximum stamina, as well as replenish it if it's running low. This, among some other smaller changes, came when the expansion of Monster Hunter World, Iceborne, was released. Conveniently, there's plenty of these stones scattered around Zorah to allow the hunter to use them to drop the stalactites down, but instead we're going to use them so our Kinsect stamina is no longer an issue. This is good, we're solving some problems. Surely we won't run into any more on our first run. I break the first magma rock and head over to the next, and around this time Nergigante appears. I do my best to scare him away and he scurries off. This unfortunately eats into my time of damaging the magma cores, which is a problem. But hey, it's the first run, let's not expect optimization just yet. I head to the next magma core, but I don't have enough time to destroy this one before I'm put into phase 2, where I have to somehow do damage without using any of the ballistas, cannons, or Dragonator. Zorah slowly walks towards the barricade, and I get to see how far my Kinsect can actually fly out before stopping. And it isn't as far as I'd like, so all I can really do is wait. Eventually, I can finally hit him, doing 7 damage on non-critical zones and 9 damage on his weak points. As a reminder, I need to do 17,400 damage to be successful in this fight. As I'm chipping away at Zorah's health, I'm noticing he's doing a decent amount of damage to the barricade, especially when he does his ultimate move here. I can tell it's coming when the handler lets me know it's charging up, and boy does it do damage. A single shot chunks down the barricade's health. Thankfully, sometimes when he's charging up, the NPCs fire a one-shot binder with the ballista to stop him. I wasn't too concerned about the barricade though, I just wanted to keep doing damage and see if I could end the fight before it crumbled. The NPCs stop him from ulting once again, so maybe I could rely on them to deal with Zorah's stronger moves on the barricade while I did some damage. I ended up breaking some parts of Zorah's, and that allowed me to do 14 damage now to his chest area. Not bad. Unfortunately, the NPCs couldn't help anymore, as at this point all of the ballistas on top of the structure have been destroyed. 32 minutes into this 50-minute encounter, I fail the quest because of the barricade being completely demolished by Zorah Magdaros. Alright, well, that wasn't the cleanest run possible, but I definitely learned a lot of things that will come in handy for the next run. Actually, I feel super confident. Perhaps the next hunt will be the one to demolish this beast. I start the second hunt and die immediately to some lava. Okay, good second attempt, but maybe the next one will be better. This is a good opportunity to talk about food buffs. There are none that actually influence the damage of the Kinsect. Anything that would increase my damage, such as booster, heroics, attack up L, don't apply to our bug, unfortunately. But eating for something like defense and health never hurts. On our next hunt, I noticed there's stones placed at the beginning of the fight I can grab, so I don't have to worry about that later. I optimized my damage well this time around and managed to break the second core before Nergigante shows up. I implement an expert strategy I cooked up to take down this foe. Nergigante is a big part of Monster Hunter World's story. He is a monster so formidable that he feasts on elder dragons. How is my goofy ass supposed to deal with him in a quick and concise manner that will allow me to focus on doing damage on Zorah Magdaros instead? Easy. I can ignore him. Yeah, if you just pretend he doesn't exist, he just gets bored and leaves, allowing me to focus on doing more damage to his cores. Works out perfectly. In the optional arch-tempered version of the Zorah Magdaros fight that you can do later in the game, you actually can't skip the Nergigante fight, but thankfully in the story fight, you can. I progress into the second phase of the fight once again. The phase transition triggers at the exact same time regardless of the damage you end up doing in the first phase, so it's important to squeeze out as much damage as you can. I'm noticing it's kinda difficult to hit this guy when he reels back. Unfortunately, my Kinsect can only go so far. On top of that, the Barneys surrounding the barricade really hate my guts and want to interrupt me at any opportunity, if not straight up launching me off the barricade. I feel this time around my DPS is pretty damn good. We're already seeing some solid improvement from the first hunt. Once again, the NPCs help us out by using the one-shot binder, but just like last time, he burns the barricade down like a deck of cards over time. Perhaps I don't do enough damage to simply ignore him melting through the barrier. Clearly, I'm having trouble with the second phase of this fight, but the first phase seems pretty solid at this point. But to be honest, we're just simply not ready to take this beast down. I calculated that if I hit him on his chest for 14 damage each, I would need to hit him 1,714 times to defeat him. Okay, that sounds like a lot. Perhaps I should optimize my Kinsect's damage before we return, and that's exactly what I did. This is the perfect opportunity to get into how Kinsects work when it comes to the damage they deal. So as I mentioned before, any food skills I use don't affect Kinsects, and this also applies to armor skills and basically anything that increases your attack damage like your weapon. Basically, anything that would make your hunter stronger wouldn't apply to the Kinsect since it functions separately. Armor skills that are beneficial for the Kinsect is Slinger Capacity. This will allow me to equip even more stones and pods to fuel my Kinsect, as well as Flinch Free and Power Prolonger. Flinch Free is very interesting. If you had Flinch Free 3 slotted in, whenever you obtain triple buffs with the Kinsect, you would get 3 points in earplugs, wind resistance, and tremor resistance. Pair that up with a couple gems of each, and you can negate those effects entirely for monsters. Unfortunately, these effects are either not useful for Zorah Magdaros, or not attainable at this point in the game. Power Prolonger can extend how long your triple buffs last. The Slinger ammo can help with this too, extending the length of the effects from Flinch Free 3. Aside from these skills in particular, armor skills can help you defensively, but none will increase the actual damage output from the Kinsect. Skills like Part Breaker that work on your weapon will not work with the Kinsects either. Well then, how do we make the Kinsect stronger? The easiest and obvious way is to nurture the Kinsect and move it along the upgrade tree. The Kinsect can either be assigned to being a Sever or Blunt damage type. Sever can do cutting damage, and Blunt can be used to stun enemies. Zorah doesn't really get affected by either, so whichever has the highest power stat usually is the one to pick. At this point in the game, I have the highest power Kinsect, the Foe Beetle 3. Another way to increase the damage of the Kinsects is feeding it the red glowing pods that monsters drop. These drop when monsters get to 30, 20, and 10% health. Unfortunately, we won't be able to get any pods from Nergigante or Zorah in this encounter, which is a shame because pods can nearly double our damage, unlike something like the stones we were using, which don't affect our damage at all. We're getting pretty unlucky in this encounter when it comes to making our Kinsect stronger, but all is not lost. Another boost of damage for your Kinsect comes from the glaive itself. Not to be mistaken by just making the best insect glaive you can, what really matters is the type of boost it supplies. The raw damage or element of the glaive itself will not affect our Kinsect. Since we're rocking with a blunt Kinsect, we're going to use the blunt boost, and I ain't talking chronic. Alternatively, a speed boost glaive can help your Kinsect get to hard to reach places when it comes to Zorah quickly. You can also equip an element boost insect glaive, which leads me to explain our final way to boost Kinsect damage, and that is changing the element of our Kinsect. We can put an element on our Kinsect to hit some of Zorah's weak zones for extra damage. Since we don't have access to Dragon Element at this point in the game, our best bet is to get water. And a quick note, Elder Seal doesn't affect Zorah either, but that doesn't really matter since we can't get that yet. We can change the Kinsect's element without upgrading it around the Kinsect tree because it acts as a separate part of the bug to customize. Unfortunately, by switching to water, we lose a point of power, but hopefully the elemental damage ends up being a net positive. In order for us to upgrade our Kinsect, we're going to need to get some Aqua Sacs. Only one monster drops that, and we only need one more, so onwards to fight the mudfish Georatodus. Like every time that I've been grinding before the Zorah Magdaros fight, I'm still only using the Kinsect. Yup, I hate myself. As if I wasn't dealing with enough challenges, this fish decided not to give me an Aqua Sac after this hunt. Oh, Desire Sensor. You cruel mistress. After making myself a plate of sashimi, we finally got the sack and our water-infused Kinsect is here. It's time to test this baby out. The first thing we get to test our new bug out on is the Magma Rock, of course. Before we used to do 12 damage, and now it's been bumped up to a whopping 13 damage. Wow, this is huge. Let's hope it increases further when it actually gets to Zorah in the second phase. Despite my newfound damage, I still can't avoid getting hit by lava sometimes. Some things just never change. Moving along to the second phase, let's see what our water bending bug can do. I'm doing 12 damage now instead of 9, and once the chest is broken, I'm doing a whopping 18 damage. Clearly having some elemental damage is a huge upgrade even though we're technically sacrificing some power. Like I mentioned before, insect glaives offer an element boost, but that ends up being weaker than the blunt boost for our Kinsect. I'm definitely chunking away at Zorah's HP here. I'm becoming more hopeful on the success of our endeavor. However, if I was being honest with myself, I still haven't solved the main problem of this hunt, and that is stopping Zorah from turning the barricade into a hot pile of ashes. Despite our damage increase, it's simply not enough to ignore the mechanics of the fight. I decided to actually start using the one-shot binders myself instead of relying on the NPCs, but I'm so focused on launching my Kinsect at him, I'm not noticing he's taking out the ballistas around me with his little lava moves. Also, you're probably thinking that using the one-shot binders goes against the rules of the challenge run, but since they don't actually do any damage to Zorah, and the challenge is only doing damage with the Kinsect, I think it's a neat little loophole we can live with. There's a one-shot binder that spawns on the top of the barricade, as well as one that spawns on the boat, so I figured I had at least 2 to use strategically over the course of the fight. It didn't help that the NPCs just completely stopped helping me out. For some reason, they don't care about me anymore. From this point forward, they'll never Ballista Binder Zorah for me ever again. I actually have no idea why. Maybe Ariana Grande said some harsh things to them. I really don't know why they did it so frequently in my earlier runs and never again later on. Speaking of useless NPCs, did you know that they actually do no damage with the ballista shots they shoot? Unlike one-shot ballistas, these ones are supposed to do damage, but they don't apparently. It's actually all for show. Thanks a lot for the help, guys. Back to the one-shot binder, he never went for the ballistas on the boat, so my plan was just to hop down there when he's charging up and bind him before he lets loose. Unfortunately, I seriously misjudged how much time I had while he charges up. It's a lot faster than I realized. I could not make it to the boat quickly enough. Ultimately, despite my increased damage, if I can't keep this dang barricade up, I'm going to get nowhere. Going forward, I was going to focus on timing these one-shot ballistas correctly. In the following hunt, I actually learned something fascinating that would increase our damage in the first phase. I know our problems lie with the final phase, but hey, more DPS couldn't hurt, right? First of all, I found a new safe spot for the second magma core, but even crazier than that is I found new spots to damage on the way to the third magma core. Did you know that Zorah has these two small rocks on his side that take damage? This was mind-blowing to me when I found out. I honestly had no idea these existed until I started fighting this guy. At this point, I've optimized the first phase to the point that I can, on average, take down 3 magma cores and the 2 side rocks. But again, we still need to figure out how to safely take this dude down in the second phase. No more shenanigans. I finally learned to correctly time my use of the binders, but without the NPCs helping anymore, 2 blocked ultimates isn't enough to ward Zorah off before I can DPS him down. We end up surviving 35 minutes at most, but we need a lot more time, but that's okay. Through all the failures, pain, and struggles we've experienced throughout this run, there was one strategy I developed in the midst of all this madness that was going to change this hunt for me forever. This is it. Everything has led up to this point. The hunt begins. I grab my stones at the beginning of the encounter as always to power up my Kinsect stamina. I start damaging the first magma core at a safe distance and refresh my Kinsect stamina with the stones when needed. Once broken, I jump down to the second core, I DPS safely, and I make sure to move away once I know Zorah is about to tremor and launch me into the core for a combo. It's funny looking at the damage being done like this when sped up. I spin around while attacking since it's more flexible when I need to move away. It's hard to explain exactly why, but trust me, it feels better for me to do it this way as opposed to standing completely still. Sometimes random lava hits you and kills you in this fight. I just gotta take the L. An unfortunate loss, but I'm not gonna go down without implementing my master strategy. I head back down and break the magma core while ignoring Nergigante as usual. It's time to venture towards the little tiny side cores. I break the first one and head to the next. Those big pillars in the environment are so tempting to drop onto Zorah, but I gotta hold strong. Once the second magma core is broken, it's time to head to the third core and do my best to take it down. I get hit here and there, but the overall DPS is still pretty solid. Unfortunately, I don't get to break the third core here, but it shouldn't be too much of an issue. The real struggle begins with phase 2. I immediately grab the first one-shot binder and I wait for Zorah to head closer to the barricade so I can hit him with my Kinsect. I aim to do some damage on his weak zones. 12 damage, that will be bumped up to 18 once we get the break. This is the best Kinsect, element, and glaive type in the business at this point of the game, folks. Everything is here on the table. These Barneys are incredibly annoying, but I can't let them stop me. I get the first part break and that allows me to hit him for the 18 damage giga hits. I get roasted by his blasts, sometimes they're a little hard to avoid. What's a hunt without some stakes though? Clearly this was done for content. I'm one death away from losing the fight. If only Fortify worked with Kinsects, this could have been a strategic damage building decision. I dodge the lava this time around, but my ballistas aren't so lucky. Another stagger happens. It's hard to determine why he staggers in this fight since there are some attempts where he barely staggers at all, and some where he staggers very frequently, but honestly, I'm thinking too much about trivial stuff. I need to think about one-shot binding this guy before he destroys my barricade. I land the hit and I fall off so I can run to the boat quicker, and not definitely because I misinputted and walked off the platform. As you can see, the barrier defense is quite healthy at this point into the fight, which is hopeful. I grab the one-shot binder from the boat this time around and head back up to do some more damage. I dodge his blast again. I don't want to talk about how many times I've gotten hit by that over the course of all these hunts leading up to this one. After doing some very good damage, I was feeling like it was time to show off my new, incredible strategy. I call it the boat technique. The boat is placed in a way that I can reach Zorah with my Kinsect, and since all of his attacks are focused on the barricade, this entire boat is a safe spot. Not even the Barneys will attack me here, which is why I was secretly not too worried that I carded twice. If all goes well, I should be completely safe from harm. The trade-off for this boat though is that I do a considerable amount less in DPS because a lot of his moves make it so my Kinsect can't reach to do damage, leading to a lot of downtime. So less DPS overall, but that's okay because the boat allows me to do something insane. As you can see, the one-shot ballista is back, even though I grabbed one from this boat earlier in the fight. There's also a ballista on the boat that I can use to restrain Zorah during his ultimate, meaning I have even less reason to head back up, especially at this point where he has already destroyed all the ballista on the barricade with his lava moves. But back to the one-shot ballista I picked up. If I grabbed one earlier in the fight and another one now, how could this be? In all my labbing and strategizing, I found out that it actually infinitely respawns. Conveniently before he uses his ultimate too. I couldn't believe it. This means I can restrain every single Zorah Magdaros ultimate with the one-shot binder using the ballista on the boat while being able to safely damage him, thus keeping the barricade safe and focusing entirely on the damage dealt by the Kinsect. The final hurdle that remains in this fight though is whether or not the Kinsect can do enough damage to end the fight. That's what we need to figure out. You can see in certain angles we can get some really good damage on Zorah. It does require a lot of precise aiming though. However, during certain moves you can see I simply can't do anything until he resets to a neutral position. Thankfully, his chip damage does so little that we should be able to get to the end of the 50-minute timer without our barricade being destroyed. But hopefully we end the fight before it hits 50 minutes or it's game over. I honestly wonder how much harder this would be if I couldn't replenish my Kinsect stamina with stones. If I had to just stand there and wait for it to go back up, this would truly be brutal. Thankfully, because of the Slinger capacity armor skill we have equipped, we should have enough stones to last us the rest of the fight. At this point, there's 20 minutes left before we time out, and this becomes a big test of patience. I could go up on the barricade to do more DPS and jump back down before he readies his ultimate, but considering I already died twice, I didn't want to risk the hunt, and honestly, I was curious to see how much damage could be dealt from the boat. Also, I didn't want to mistime anything and have him chunk down the barrier with his ult. As my Kinsect is whittling away at Zorah's HP, constantly bashing his head into him like a goddamn soldier, I started to think about if all of this was even a good idea. No ballista ammo that does damage, no cannons, no environmental damage from the stalagmites, no damage from my physical insect glaive or the use of its powders, and no juicy damage from the Dragonator. Was this challenge stupid as hell? Well, it absolutely was. But that didn't stop me from doing this. By his beam attack. Alright. Oh! Wait, we did it! We did it with 10 minutes to go. Oh my god, let's go! Yo! After 42 minutes of repeatedly sending my Kinsect hurtling towards a moving mountain, Zorah Magdaros gets taken down by damage solely from the Kinsect. I couldn't believe the boat method would actually lead me to this spectacular dub. There's definitely room for even more optimization, but the fact that this can be done bodes well for the future of the Kinsect only challenge. What more can this little guy do? Defeat Xeno'jiiva? Behemoth? Fatalis? Well, there's only one way to find out. I'm live right now with the Kinsect only challenge run, taking this bug to its absolute limits, so catch me on twitch.tv/flyann and we will see just how far this bug can go. But for now, we say goodbye to our favorite turtle friend. Good night, Zorah. I'm afraid we ain't seen your ass in Monster Hunter 6 after this. Thanks for watching.